I was actually in the toilet and Gunther sends me a message. I need you in the hospitality at the track as soon as possible. And I'm like, oh shit, I gotta get ready quick. Like either something good or something bad's gonna happen now, because for him to be like, you gotta come here as soon as possible. So I got to the track. He was there waiting for me in the hospitality, sitting down at the table, and he had these papers on the table. He was like, listen, are you ready? And I said, yeah, I'm ready for anything. And he goes, no, Pietro, you gotta say you're fucking born ready. And I said, all right, Gunther, I'm fucking born ready.
Ladies and gents, welcome back once again to Pitstop. Oh, today's a great day, man. We've got a great guest. I think anyone at home watching who's a motorsport fan is going to know this guy. So blessed to have him in the flat.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode. Ladies and gentlemen, Pietro Fittipaldi. There we go.
Happy to be here. Thank you, guys.
How you doing, brother? You good?
Yeah, very good. Super happy we were able to connect. I just got back from Japan a few days ago, and then we're off to Qatar in a few days, so it was good good to come by over here.
Yeah, man, I'm glad we managed to get it in. I saw you in Japan. You were filming with Will Buxton. You were on F1 mics.
Yeah, so F1 TV, sometimes, depending on the race, they invite me to do the post-race show and some stuff in between the practices and qualifying, so I was there with Will. I always try to do what he does, you know, he's super good on TV and stuff.
He's amazing at it.
It's always exciting. Yeah.
How is that for you, like doing that in front of a camera?
I mean, honestly, I like it a lot because when I'm there as reserve driver throughout the race weekend, sometimes there's not so much to do. So if they're able to, you know, get me on, you know, to do some TV work either on Friday, Saturday, or, you know, even Sunday after the race, it's always something else extra to do, you know. So I always enjoy it.
Yeah, because right now you're Haas reserve driver, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So you have no idea. You go to all these race weekends, and sometimes you may never even put a race suit on or anything.
Yeah, some race weekends, I mean, you arrive there and you basically follow the weekend as if you were going to race. But by the time it gets to Saturday and the driver's qualified, it's over, because after the driver qualifies the car, even if let's say they can't race on Sunday, kind of what happened to Lance.
With Lance,
you can't put another driver into the car. You can go straight into qualifying, but you can't go straight into the race.
Right.
So actually in 2021, Nikita Mazepin got COVID. We were still doing the COVID test, and he had a COVID test, I think, on Friday, and he got his results Saturday night, and he was positive for COVID. And the team were like, oh, you might need to drive tomorrow on Sunday. But then they were looking at the rules and stuff. It's like, you can't go straight into the race.
Oh, mate, what a shame.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, throughout the race week, and I'm there kind of following the schedule with the team. Some of the stuff I do with the team as well is I do driver data and like onboard analysis. So just to keep me busy throughout the race weekend. So throughout the sessions, I'm with the engineers live, like looking at all the data between our drivers versus other drivers on the grid and between themselves, and passing that info on to the race engineer like live throughout the session. So from my driver's point of view of like where they can improve and stuff like that. So that keeps me busy as well throughout the race weekend. Plus the F1 TV stuff, which is cool. Are
you kind of secretly hoping that like a driver bins it in practice or something so you can just get in that seat? Because I'll be sitting there like, man, get me in that car.
No, honestly, you're doing it because you always hope for the chance that you'll be able to race, which happened when, you know, Grosjean had his accident and stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, you never, maybe a crash, no, but if the guy eats, you know, some you know, dodgy food on Friday and you get to hop in,
I'll be going around chucking that shit in their food. Like, oh, I'm winning this weekend.
You never know what can happen, so you always got to be ready, so, yeah.
We're all 27 years old, all three of us.
Oh, really? Okay. When were you guys born?
November. 96, February.
95 November, yeah.
You?
I'm June 96.
June. Nice. But we all have very different lives. But I want to hear your story, like from the beginning, because how on earth did you start in this racing? I know you have the family legacy and everything with the name, but when did you first get in a car? Was there like a moment?
Yeah, so the year I was born actually in 96 was the year my grandfather stopped racing because he had a big accident in Michigan and like broke his back and his neck, and it was one of several accidents he had, so the doctors told him you have to stop racing. That was the year I was born. So when I was growing up, my granddad wasn't racing, but I had two of my uncles racing, which was Christian Fittipaldi and Max Pappas, who was married to my mom's sister. And I grew up watching them race, and they were racing like IndyCar, they were racing Grandad back in the day, which is what IMSA is now. So doing like the Daytona 24 hours and all that type of stuff. So when I was a kid, I would go watch them. And I would always go to the Daytona 24 Hours. It was my favorite race because as a kid, I would stay in the motorhome with them, like up all night. You know, I don't need to sleep because the 24-hour race, whatever. And you're doing stuff at like 2, 3 in the morning with some other friends there in the paddock as a kid, you know, and watching the cars go around.
Such a cool environment to grow up in.
Yeah, it's like you do the little camping thing outside the motorhome, and you know that kind of was my what I remember racing from when I was a kid. That's what kind of brought me into it. And then when I was 4, my dad gave me my first go-kart, and it started with going, you know, like once every 2 months karting. You know, you go to the track, my dad would take me, and then it became once a month, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And then I started competing when I was around 6 or 7, and it basically went on from there. And this at the time we were living in Miami, so I was born in Miami and raised there. And and all my karting and stuff we did in Florida.
Brad was Miami as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, you know Brad, right?
Yeah, so I think Brad, I never raced with him, but I think it was my brother. So my brother's 5 years younger than me, Enzo. And I think it was, he would race with Enzo and race this year and F2 together this year. So a lot of the guys like in the US and even drivers from South America, they would come to Florida to do karting because there was a big karting championship, which still exists, called the Florida Winter Tour. And so all like let's say the Americas, they would come to that championship, and that's where we know some of the other drivers.
This thing behind me is the thing that I'm so excited to hear your story, but I can't wait to see this. One, because you know Brad already, but 2, because you do a lot of stuff in the Haas sim, right?
Yeah, so we do a lot of simulator work.
Yeah.
That's something we do just as drivers to keep ready and as well to help develop the car. And me and my brother, we stream a lot on Twitch and now on Kick. And we do a lot of virtual championships and races, so it's the F1 game.
Yeah,
a lot of Austria, I heard.
That's what
as well.
I was going to say. We've seen it. You're actually playing on the F1 game on there, streaming, right?
Yeah, so we play a lot in the F1 game. We have the Fitty series. It's like a championship, and we get our partners involved, and we get some cool awards and stuff for everybody.
Can we join that?
For sure. Anytime, bro.
We're terrible.
We'll just be bandwagons, man. It's fun.
No, but we do it with the chat, so people just come in and join. We get the best chat racers, though the guys are pretty good.
That'd be hilarious.
And some pro esports guys in Brazil. And we always, like, every time we're back home for a couple of weeks, we do this championship. So we probably do it like 3-4 times a year. And with like cool prizes and stuff. So it's in the F1 game.
It's cool that you and your brother do that, but it's also really cool that you have your YouTube and the English version.
Yeah,
that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, so we have the English YouTube version. It's a Fittipaldi Brothers English channel, and we're still trying to grow it because the Portuguese version is it's big and we do a lot with it. And on TikTok, most of our content there is English, but like all the YouTube stuff is like behind the scenes and vlog stuff from our F2, F1, and World Endurance Championship race weekends. And we do it in English too. But we're still trying to grow it. It's small still, but we put a lot of content out over there.
That's great. Let's take it back to your story. So you were karting every couple of weeks. Where did it go from there? Yeah,
so I would say, around when I was 8, that's when you kind of start, you competitively karting. I mean, you go to the local club race and stuff, and it went on from there. And then doing karting until I was 14, and we never really had the funding to go race in Europe with karts or anything like that, because everything in Europe is seen as being I'd say more professional in terms of like the karting environment, but a lot more expensive. So if you have the needs, you go to Europe and you start racing karting over here. But it's like the budgets to race here are crazy, and we were never able to do that. So we always stayed local in the U.S. And actually, the kids that we would always race against in karting was my brother was always racing against Logan Sargent, so he was always there. Actually, my brother's teammate in F2, Zane Maloney, as well, was racing with my brother.
Yeah, sick.
I was racing with Logan's older brother, Dalton Sargent. So he
didn't even know he had a brother.
I didn't even know Logan had an older
brother.
What
was he like? Was he good?
He was very good. So we were like rivals in karting there. It was me, Dalton, a guy that's in IndyCar now, Kyle Kirkwood, Oliver Askew, which used to race for McLaren IndyCar, and Patricio Award. So a lot of those guys. A lot of guys that ended up going pretty far in racing. We're all racing locally together, like in Florida and stuff. So it's a small world. But basically, when I was 14, we were thinking about moving to cars. And like I said, we didn't have the sponsorship to go to Europe. So I said, let's go the NASCAR route, because NASCAR was, you know, was more affordable at the time to start racing. And I started racing late models, which are these big 500 horsepower NASCAR cars in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I started doing well over there and ended up winning a championship when I was 15.
He's a man of short stature, but you got to remember, dynamite comes in small packages as well, my friends.
They might be borrowing a booster seat from Dexter Jr. too.
That's true. Into turn number 1 goes Pietro Fittipaldi to the outside.
Is that just on ovals?
Just on ovals and short track oval racing. So they're like quarter-mile tracks.
Right.
Like you do a lap in from like 15 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Other tracks at like 20 seconds.
How fast do they go in the cars?
Dude, they're 500 horsepower car. They're like big. They look exactly like the NASCAR Cup Series car. So like massive, 500 horsepower. So in that track, you probably get to like 115 miles an hour, 120. But if you go down the straight, you'll go to like 180, 200.
Wow.
It's 500 horsepower. It's like, it's a proper little car. And I was 14, 15 racing. And I was racing against these guys who were in their 20s. Because in NASCAR, a lot of these guys own the cars, and the races, which is different from Europe, they have prize money. So you have like races where they would race, and if you win the race, you win like $50,000.
Okay.
So these guys were actually, that's what they're like, what they were making a living out of. Like they would run the car themselves with a couple buddies or whatever, and but they were like super good because they were racing every race weekend, and they would make money off the prize money that they would win from those races. But I started racing that, and when I won the championship, I was really focused on just doing the NASCAR route. My family moved to North Carolina from Miami. My sister hated it because she had to leave all her friends and stuff. My mom too, and they moved just because of my racing. And it was gonna go, you know, the NASCAR route, and I was finally able to get the funding through the Telmex program, which is a program who funded Esteban Gutierrez and Sergio Perez to Formula One.
Yeah.
I know nothing about that, by the way.
Yeah, so Telmex is a telecommunications company, and it's owned by Carlos Slim, and he's very, like, has a lot of passion for racing. So his dream was always to get a Mexican driver to Formula One and one day be world champion. So he funded Esteban and Sergio and some other Mexican drivers. He's involved in NASCAR, and when I won the championship, basically he said, why don't you join the Telmex program? You'll be the first non-Mexican driver in the program, but I'll fund your racing, but it's not NASCAR. You'll have to go race in Europe. And then that's when I made
You were like, okay.
I was like, you know what? Well, I'm going to go. So my family had just moved. And then I was like, listen, we got to, you know, take this risk and go to Europe. So then I moved to the UK, and I was 16. And I lived with another Mexican racing driver who was part of the program too. And I raced here, British Formula Renault, British F4. So I won the British Formula Renault championship. I won this Asian F3 championship called the MRF. And then the World Series 3.5 championship. And then I got my chance then with Haas, and other things happened.
It must have been a pretty big change from NASCAR over to here, though, because in NASCAR it doesn't let anything go. Like, it's pretty wild, right?
Yeah, it's very wild. It was a massive change. But like the team owners I was racing for in NASCAR, it's a team called Lee Falk Racing, and it was a dad and a son who ran it. And the dad was in his probably late 50s, and the son in the 30s, and they were like super into, like, you have to be disciplined, and like after the race you're cleaning the car with us and you're taking the car apart. So I was able to learn like a lot from then, and a lot of things that I wouldn't learn here in like racing in Europe.
I was going to say,
but really like Southern American style.
That's
you know?
what I mean.
So,
like the people must be so different. Have you seen Talladega Nights?
dude, it's
just like that.
It's like that short track racing. I used to race at a track where I won the championship. It was called Hickory Motor Speedway. It's one of the oldest NASCAR racing tracks in the U.S., and it's still running. And it's a small little track. You just look up Hickory Motor Speedway, you can see, and it's like probably one of the oldest tracks in the U.S., if not the oldest. And I mean, you'd go there. The races were on Saturday night. They would be filled, the grandstands, with like at least 4,000 or 5,000 people watching us race. 30 of these late model cars in a quarter-mile track. So it's like constant racing and carnage, like wrecks happening everywhere. The first race I ever went to, there was a preliminary race before ours, so kind of like F2, is with F1. I was there watching, and the leaders ended up crashing in the last corner, last lap. The guy who got wrecked got out of the car, climbed on the hood of the other car as the other driver was climbing out, and literally like karate chopped him. Like, I swear to God, this happened. And this was the first race I ever went to watch. And it was like my introduction to NASCAR short track racing.
Man.
The guy climbed on the hood, and as the guy was climbing out, he does like a double leg, like jumps into the guy's neck.
I love that. I might be like biased. I don't know whether I'm biased or not, but I think F1 needs a bit more of that.
Dude,
stuff
I think so
going on,
too,
bro.
man. It's like
ice hockey, you know, when they beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, and then once the drivers start fighting, then it's like the teams then fight with each other, you know, because it's like the drivers are fighting the teams. There's always police at the races, and the police gets involved. But it's like local police, you know, so it's like they're in with it, you know, they let it run for a bit for the show. So that's how I got introduced to Southern NASCAR racing. But that's what I learned kind of car racing from. I did karting in Florida, but what I got introduced to car racing was with that, and then I came to the UK.
Wow,
it was a different route.
What a story, though. I love that. That's really cool.
And you moved straight to the UK here?
Yeah, so I moved to a town called Camberley. It's in Surrey.
Okay.
And I was 16 at the time, and I was living with my teammate, which was a Mexican driver, part of the Tumex program too. And yeah, we're living together. He was a bit older than me, but I was kind of not thrown in the deep end. But I came in here. My dad stayed with me the first couple weeks, and then it was just me and my teammate Diego living in a house, which was actually a family friend's office. It's like an office house.
Yeah.
And then they moved to a building, but they kept the office house because it was like kind of a lucky charm for them, because they became very successful. And they had a couple of their employees living there, and they said, you and Diego can live over here. So we were living in this house, and it was interesting, very crazy, but I got to learn a lot. I didn't know how to cook or anything, or do any of that stuff. I was always living with my parents. So
yeah, we hear that a lot, don't we? Drivers come on here, they say, because a lot of people had similar stories, and then they're put through the same path of having to learn everything themselves.
Yeah, because it's things that when you're 16, I mean, you're living at home. At least I had the luxury, like my mom was always at home cooking and doing all the stuff that when you're growing up, you don't even think about, I'm going to have to put my clothes in the laundry machine. Like, I never even turned the thing on. Like, I was 15.
We still don't know how to turn it on. No idea.
So you learn that when you come and, you end up living on your own. So then you see the privileges you had when you had your parents taking care of you. I think you appreciate it a little bit more.
You must grow up so quick. In the space of like a year, all of a sudden, you learn all this new shit, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, I think you do. You mature a lot faster, and I think then every time I go back home, like through the off season, then I think you appreciate things that maybe before you didn't, So
You've raced in ovals as well, though. Have you IndyCar ovals? Yeah.
Yeah. So the NASCAR stuff was all ovals, and then in IndyCar as well, I did the Indy 500 and yeah. So I have a good oval background. I think I'm the first guy that started with NASCAR and ended up driving or racing in Formula One.
Oh, really?
There's been like F1 to NASCAR with like Juan Pablo Montoya, and even both my uncles raced NASCAR. But there's never been a NASCAR, let's say, sanctioned champion to then go from NASCAR to then F1. So someone told me that, so I was like, "Oh, this is a pretty cool stat." Yeah.
Write that in the Instagram bio.
Yeah. NASCAR to F1. Yeah.
I think NASCAR is wicked, but we don't know much about it.
Never watched it, to be honest with you. Don't. It's kind of hard to get it on the TV over here.
Yeah, it is. But it's a cool event. I recommend going to Daytona 500, obviously, and then as well there's a race called in Bristol, Bristol Night Race, which is a short track.
Here?
No, so it's the same name. It's Bristol, and I think it's in Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
And it's like a football stadium, basically, because the grandstands are like massive in this little track, and like when you're on the grandstands watching, it feels like you're like on top of the track.
Yeah, that's sick.
It's like an NFL stadium with a racetrack in the middle. It's pretty cool.
So cool. Where we grew up, we had Arlington, didn't we?
Arlington, yeah.
So like Arlington Speedway, it was tiny. You could probably fit like 500 people there. There wasn't really grandstands or anything. It still goes now, but that's probably the closest thing that I can imagine to going to see NASCAR, because it's small. you're right up front with the cars, and like you got pieces of rubber coming through the thing and hitting you in the face and that, and you can smell it.
That's really cool.
Arlington,
It's old school.
They do the caravan racing as well.
Yeah,
Where they have a car put in a caravan.
they called it stock car racing, the other stuff, didn't they? So like, I think anyone can compete. Like you put a roll cage in your car
and you're going.
Let's go smash it up. Yeah.
Now, did they sell fried Oreos though?
Fried Oreos?
Fried Oreos, bro.
No.
Yeah, at Hickory Motor Speedway, they got the best fried Oreos.
What, are they in, like a batter?
Dude, yeah, they get Oreos and they just put it in the frying oil. Yeah.
I've had a battered Mars bar.
#1 bestseller.
Have you had a battered Mars bar? Have you tried a battered Mars bar?
No. Is it good?
They're good, man. Go to a chippy in the UK. You have to bring the Mars bar.
Oh, and
but they'll do it for you. It's unreal.
Jesus.
It's unreal.
Would you ever be interested in going back to NASCAR?
Yeah, I would, honestly. I really like NASCAR racing. I like oval racing. And as well, going back one day to race in IndyCar, it's always been a dream of mine as well to race full-time in IndyCar. So that's something that I'd always be open to doing.
But at this point in your career, you are with Haas.
Yeah.
So is that like a every race thing?
Yeah, so I go to, basically this year out of the 23 races, I'm going to attend 18.
Okay.
And the other races I don't go is because it clashes with what I'm racing in WEC, in the World Endurance Championship. Right. So I'm racing with an English team. It's called Team Joda. And they're a very successful team in endurance racing. And so, yeah, when I have clashes with other racing commitments, then I'm able to, go do my racing and miss those events.
That's nice
with
that
Haas,
you can do that. Was the goal always to get a full-time F1 seat? Yeah,
that was always the goal.
Yeah.
But that goal is always, very difficult. Because if you think about it, in Formula 1, there's only 20 race seats, right? And not every year a driver, gets out of a seat and a new one comes in. So if you think about it, maybe, let's say on a good year, maybe 3 or 4 maximum drivers get replaced with new guys. But I'd say even 4 is a bit optimistic. And and you'd think maybe there's 7 or 8 reserve drivers. So in total, there's like 28 roles as driver in Formula 1. And you're competing with so many other drivers trying to get in. So I think that's why it's, that's always been the goal and the dream, but it is always very, very difficult to make it to Formula 1.
And that's still the goal now? Like it could still happen,
No, it could still happen. Obviously, it's difficult. I mean, I raced 2 races in Formula 1 in 2020 when Roman had his accident. I've been with the team now it's my 5th season. And I do, a lot of the testing for the team and the development. And that's something that as a driver I've been able to learn a lot from. But for sure, the goal with myself is one day to race full-time in Formula 1. But I know the position I am in my career now too. I've been doing very well in endurance racing as well. So there's opportunities for me next year, to do keep racing in endurance racing, which is pretty exciting nowadays with the new hypercar class with Ferrari, Toyota, Porsche, BMW all in it. And if I can keep do that and still keep my role as reserve driver in Formula 1, that's something that I'd be open to doing. But for sure, if there's ever the opportunity to go race full-time in F1, I mean, any driver would take that any day. So
when you stepped into that F1 car because of Grosjean's crash and you had them 2 races, did you feel ready for it? Because that must have been a pretty big, you're in, you're up.
So it was pretty crazy because that year was the COVID year. I was planned to race in Super Formula in 2020 in Japan. And because of COVID, that ended up not happening. So it was the only year that I stayed without driving a race car for over 9 months. Because I was supposed to be racing in Japan, and because of COVID, they canceled it.
Yeah.
So I was just doing my reserve driver role with Haas. And when this thing happened, it was at the end of the year. And I hadn't been inside a race car for 9 months. And usually the longest I'd ever stayed without being, driving a car was 2 months. So this was the longest time I've ever been without driving anything.
Oh my God.
And I'm driving now my first Formula 1 race, the most, let's say, unprepared or unrace fit that I was in my whole life.
Yeah,
and the way it worked, obviously Grosjean had the accident on Sunday.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how he was doing. But I always knew that there was a possibility that I might need to race. I woke up Monday morning And I was actually in the toilet, and Gunther sends me a message, and he goes, "I need you in the hospitality at the track as soon as possible." And I'm like, "Oh shit, I gotta fucking get ready quick and go to the track." It's like either something good or something bad's gonna happen now. Because for him to be like, "You gotta come here as soon as possible," it's like, did I mess up something? Or so I got to the track, and he was there waiting for me in the hospitality. Sitting down the table, and he had these papers on the table, and I was like, he's either gonna fire me or he's gonna tell me something good here. So I arrived, I sat down, and he would started speaking, and he was like, "Listen, are you ready?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, and he goes, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready for anything." And he goes, "No, Pietro, you got to say you're fucking born ready." And I said, "All right, Gunther, I'm fucking born ready." So he goes, "So here are the papers, and we want you to do the final 2 races in Formula 1 because Roman, he's healthy and stuff, but he won't be able to do the Bahrain and Abu Dhabi, and we want you in the car."
Right.
So then I signed the papers, and then I was in to drive the last 2 races. Luckily, I had Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to prepare with the team. So it wasn't like a Liam Lawson call-up where it was, middle of the day, like you got to get in now. I had a few days to prepare. But honestly, as I said, it was the longest I hadn't been driving. But when you get in, like it takes you a few laps, 1 run, and you're already back in the groove. It's like if you haven't ridden a bicycle for a long time.
Yeah.
Or if you haven't played a video game that let's say you were really good at for a long time, and you start playing it again, it comes back. It comes back very fast. So it came back fast, and we performed really well. Like even in Abu Dhabi, if you look at the qualifying there, I was on par with Kevin Magnussen at the time, and in the race as well. We had a good strategy. We overtook him, and we were on for a decent finish. Haas had the worst car of the season that year. Then we had some gearbox problems that we had to do some extra pit stops. But I got in, and we had a really good performance. And I think for me, that was really, really important.
When you walked out of hospitality that day after being given them papers, do you remember like the first person you text? Or
I was trying to call my dad, but my dad was sleeping in the U.S. because my dad always works with me and my brother very closely.
Yeah.
And I was like obviously extremely excited. And I was trying to call him, but they were in the States, so it was like super early for them. But I kept trying to ring, and they wouldn't answer. And everybody that I knew was sleeping. So by the time they woke up, it was like 4 p.m. in the afternoon in Bahrain, and they woke up to the news, basically. So I couldn't speak to anybody like close to me until they woke up and already saw the news, because everybody was sleeping.
Or buzzkill.
Yeah, it was a bit of a buzzkill. Like I'm trying to call some people that I know to be like, "Fuck, dude, I'm racing Formula 1. Nobody's awake."
That's mad.
Yeah.
How much of a kind of relationship, or like how much of an interest does your granddad show with what you do?
Yeah, so my granddad, he's basically...
Because he's a legend. I mean, you know it. When I first told my dad that you were coming on the pod, he was like, "What? A Fittipaldi? Like, that's F1 royalty."
Yeah,
so obviously my grandfather in racing, as you said, is a legend, especially in Brazil. I think he opened the doors for Brazilian racing drivers in Formula 1, because he was the first successful Brazilian Formula 1 driver, and the first Brazilian F1 champion. And not only him, but having both my uncles who are involved in racing, and to have their support is a massive privilege, because I get messages from a lot of people, and even some family friends, like, "Oh, if I wanted to start racing, what do I have to do?" And I always had that kind of easy to me, like I know exactly what I need to do if I want to go racing. Like I kind of know the path in a way. So to get into motorsport, it was natural. Where like if someone that isn't involved in motorsport, it's difficult to be like, what are the steps I need to make to get to Formula 1? To actually find that out and do it, it's hard. And both me and my brother had that from the beginning. So I think that for us was a very big help.
Do you feel pressure to try and kind of live up to what your granddad and your uncles did?
Yeah, people ask me that a lot, and for me it's like I'm doing what I love, and I'm doing it because I want to be successful. And I've always been very competitive in anything I do. So I used to play a lot of basketball and football, and I always liked doing the sport because of the competition aspect of it. And for me, racing is something that I'm very good at, and I like the competing aspect of it, and I want to do it to win. So the pressure comes from myself, because if I'm not doing well, I'm not gonna be happy.
Yeah.
I'm not just doing it to, you know, I like racing cars and stuff. No, I want to win, so and be successful in what I'm doing. So I think the pressure is a lot more from within than from what anybody else outside can give. And that's what I feel.
It's pretty special having like a family connection running all the way through, because like, I mean, your brother's in F2, so he must lean on you and speak to you about stuff.
Does he think he's better than you?
we both think we're better than each other. So
well, we need to get him on. You could both set a lap. And
we've never. There was the only race we did together. It was a karting race. It was a club race where they mixed 2 classes, because he was 5 years younger, so we're always too big of an age difference. But it was the one race where they mixed the classes and the karts were kind of similar. And I was like, I don't know, 12 at the time, and he was like 7 or 8. And we start the race, and he crashes into me, gets his cart stuck on top of mine. And Enzo's always been super small. I mean, he was 8 at the time, but he was like, I mean, the kid was always very small. There's pictures of him karting like he looks like a baby in the cart. And it was the only race we raced against each other. We crashed. His cart was stuck on mine. I was trying to lift his cart out of mine, and he was flicking me off while I was doing it.
The
like
NASCAR's coming out.
8-year-old Enzo, you motherfucker, you wrecked me, whatever. So that was the only race. So one day I want to race him on a real track with the race car, and then we can.
That would be so good.
That's a dream, actually, one day to either be racing in Formula 1 together or in IndyCar or something. That would be the ultimate dream, because me and him, we're super close. We've lived together all the time. And yeah, every F1 race that I'm there with Haas, I'm also there trying to help him. And when he's coming to my races, he's there supporting me. So
that's great.
Yeah, we have a really strong bond. Yeah,
we hear a few people that say the people that do the test driving and the sim work for the teams, they never get the credit they deserve. Like, we've got a lot of friends who've done it for other teams and stuff, and we just hear that they never get the credit, because you're putting in an unbelievable amount of work, right, in the sim. And
yeah, it is difficult. I remember the first year with Haas in 2019, I think we did it was like 60 to 70 days of simulator work. And the simulator stuff you do is like, you arrive 9 in the morning and you leave at 6, and you have a 1-hour break. It's like a normal job day, 1-hour break of lunch. But if you think about, you're doing like 6 hours of driving on the simulator, like probably doing like 150 laps a day. So like that, I did over close to like 10,000 laps on the simulator. So it was like hours of pounding, and it's yeah.
And what are you trying to get there? What are they asking you for?
So the driver, you're there, you know, to give your feedback and, you know, do the driving. So drive as best as you can. But they're testing things on the car. So different setups before a race weekend. So if we're racing in Barcelona next weekend, they're going to put the base setup of what they think is best for Barcelona on the simulator. I'm going to drive it and test it. If I feel like the balance of the car can be better, they're going to make those changes on the simulator to get the setup better before the race weekend even starts. And as well, if they have new parts and new things, aero parts that they want to test on the car, everything that they do nowadays, it's all simulation online, which they call like CFD. So they're able to integrate that onto the simulator. So if they're making aero gains with new parts and stuff, they're actually able to put that into the simulator Formula 1 car.
Wow.
And we're able to see the differences it does with handling and stuff.
What do you use, F123 or?
Yeah, some iRacing here and there.
Yeah.
Do they ever do simulator laps in the rain? In the wet?
No, in the rain, no, because it's so hard to simulate the rain.
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure whether they could simulate that.
Because the rain is so inconsistent. It's hard to simulate the rain and stuff. So it's always dry weather.
You probably can't talk too much about it, but like, what is like an F1 team sim like? And I know they probably vary from team to team. We went to which is a team, and you know, they had a room probably about this size with like kind of like, it's like half a car in it, you know, and you get in, but you put the gloves on. Did we wear a helmet? I don't think we did.
No.
But we had the suit, didn't we? We had something.
Oh yeah, we dressed up.
And the screen kind of comes all the way around
screen
here, and it's awesome, man. It's so cool. So what's it like in a Haas sim?
So we as well use the Ferrari simulator, and
cool.
what it is, it's you have the So we actually have a Formula 1 chassis on this platform, and around the platform is the screen, kind of how you set it. So you have the screen like this, you have the chassis in the middle, but our platform, instead of being fixed on the ground, it's like suspended on these thing called actuators, which are these massive beams, and you're probably like 10, 15 meters up in the air.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So I have to climb a ladder to get in.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and when it starts up, it lifts, and when you're going through the corners or accelerating or braking, the whole platform is either moving forward, back, or left, right, or whatever to simulate some of the movements that you would feel in the race car.
I can tell you didn't do that. I can tell you no, I didn't do that. How similar is it to a real car? Because you can compare both now because you've done it.
Like for a racing driver, it's a very good tool to, if you don't know the track and you need to learn the track, if you do the simulator work, like you arrive 100% more prepared for the race weekend. Now, if it's a track that you've gone many times already before and you've raced already there with the Formula 1 car, it's maybe not a massive gain because it's similar, but it's not the same as the Formula 1 car or any race car. What you can get from it is you get like your brake references, you get, you know, the apex points and stuff, so kind of the tendencies of the track. But what's really good for a driver, let's say even if you know the track and the car well, is you use the simulator to go over the race weekend with your race engineers before the weekend even starts. So you kind of do a simulation of the race weekend.
Oh, with the pits?
Yeah, and like
else?
kind of the overall strategy and what your run plan is and stuff, and what setup changes you might possibly do in the racetrack. You do that all before you even get to the track.
Every driver does that on the grid before a race.
Most drivers do. And at least with other series as well, you do that as a preparation, which is good because like you prepare, you run through the race weekend before you get there. So when you get there, you kind of feel you're in the groove of things before you even get to FP1.
Wow. So you would spend more time in the sim than Hülkenberg and Magnussen?
Yeah.
Would you?
Definitely.
I could be completely wrong here, but would there not be like a massive benefit in them spending a load more time in the sim and then turning up on race weekend?
Yeah, I guess, but I think it's more driver dependent because there's 23 race weekends in Formula 1 and they're racing every race weekend. Like,
true, they can't get
some
to
time
they
off,
can't sometimes
man.
they don't have enough time.
That's true.
But even for me this year with all my other racing commitments and stuff, like I've been traveling, it's 52 weeks of the year and 36 of the weeks I'm at a racetrack.
Wow.
So it's been like non-stop. Like the past 5 weeks it was back-to-back racing. So
you don't get sick of it?
No, I don't. The more the better, honestly.
You love it?
Because I love it. Maybe at a certain point. Yeah, but at the moment, it's hard to have a girlfriend because you're traveling all the time, to be honest.
Do you have a girlfriend?
No, I had one. About a year now.
I have one in Spain.
It happens. It's life, you know. But it's no. It was a long distance thing. It's very difficult.
It happens. It's life.
No, it's difficult with the traveling and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I hear that. So you're in WEC now.
Yeah.
You had a pretty bad crash we know about in Spa, up Eau Rouge. We had JM Correa on the pod, and he had a terrible crash there as well. Yeah. So it's mad for us to see like how many people crash in this area. But what was that experience like for you? And what are your thoughts on the track? I mean, people think it should be banned or changed, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's like the amount of accidents that happen in that corner. It's it's impressive. It's probably one of the most dangerous corners, I would say, in like the F1 calendar or the European racing circuits. The interesting thing is I had my accident there. You know, I broke both my legs, but it still is my favorite racing track.
Wow.
And that's the wild thing. So like for me, every time I go race at Spa, it's like I still love it. And whether they should change the track or the corner there, which they already tried doing with moving the barriers back, but it's still not enough in my opinion. Whether they should just change the layout or whatever is something I think they should consider. Because even without that corner, the rest of the track is still amazing.
Yeah.
Like if I were to get a car or any race car and I would drive on a track, after a certain point, it would get boring if there was no competition, because I'm always, you know, I really like the competition part of it. But if there's one track that I could drive any car and still have fun on my own is Spa, because the track is like everything just connects. It's like so enjoyable to drive. But that corner at the time I was racing in the World Endurance Championship with an LMP1 car. which was a fast car. It had almost like 1,000 horsepower and stuff, and I was out for qualifying. And yeah, going through Eau Rouge, I was going up the corner, and I noticed that everything in the car shut off, and I lost power steering. So you know how the road car, when you turn, it's very light?
Yeah.
When the cars have power steering, the steering wheel is very light. When that system fails, like the car, the steering wheel becomes like a rock, basically. So the whole system shut off.
Wow.
And
So it wasn't even your fault, man.
no, so the car just shut off. They had an electrical issue, and I had no steering, so I went straight in the wall. And I was never worried about getting in crashes, and when you see a crash coming, I never actually got scared or worried about it. But this was the first time that, like, before I hit the wall, like, in my head, I was like, fuck, dude, this is gonna be big. And I remember hitting the wall, and like I kind of after a few seconds, I kind of came back to life or whatever. I remember the door of the car opened, because a prototype car, so it's a closed cockpit. The door of the car opened, and I was like, all right, I'm going to climb out of the car. So I went to unbuckle, and when I went to climb out, I was like, Jesus, my legs are, like, hurting. When I looked down, my legs were, like, my left leg was like this, with the bone out of the suit, and my right ankle was like, my foot was like here. So when I looked down, like all my legs were like in a Z, basically. Because what happened is when I hit the wall, the front left tire came into the cockpit and just smashed my legs. And that's when the pain started coming in. I think it's something to do with adrenaline, where initially you don't really realize it.
Yeah.
I think I was in like a little bit of a shock. So when I went to climb out, I had no issue. Then when I looked down, I was like, oh, fuck. Because you see, I saw my legs. It was a compound fracture. So the bones pierced the skin and the suit and everything. So I remember the marshals coming in, and I was like, dude, my legs. And they were telling me to calm down. It took them 30 minutes to get me out of the car, because like the chassis was all kind of bent in. And I remember at the time, like, the marshal was like, just hold my hand, and I was like holding his hand. And over time, like, I remember my strength going away, because like initially, like, you're grabbing on strong, and then towards the end, you're just like touching the guy's hand or whatever. But I was just, because I was in so much pain, and I was awake throughout the whole time. And I remember 2 instances where instead of blacking out, like, my vision got all white. It was really weird. Like, everything started whiting out. It got completely white, and then my vision would come back. And it happened twice.
That's scary.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, I remember telling them, I was like, listen, I can't see. But it wasn't like a blackout. It was like all white. Wow. So I think it must be something with adrenaline or shock with the pain. But they finally got the car ready to get me out, and I remember that as soon as they lifted me, it was like a massive pain, and then I blacked out. And then I woke up in the hospital, and they were on the stroller bed or whatever?
Stretcher.
The stretcher. And I remember it was like, you know those movies where the actor wakes up and he sees the faces all blurry, the lights and the people talking, and man, it was exactly the same. It was like you hear the voices kind of like in another room, but they're right there. Everything's blurry, and you see the lights.
Oh my God, that's
so it was like that, and yeah, basically they had to do surgery that night there in Belgium, because when the bones are exposed and stuff, if you take too long, it risks infection.
Were you losing a lot of blood?
Yeah, I was losing blood, but it was controllable.
Yeah.
But basically they had to do surgery that night, because if you leave it open, it's like you can risk infection, and then it's a problem. So then they put I still have the rod on this leg with 2 screws here and here. And then on my right ankle, they had to reconstruct it, which was more difficult. So they did it with like there's some plates and 7 screws, and yeah. But then from there, the guy had told me I was only gonna be back racing in a year. The surgeon told me, and I was racing IndyCar at the time. I had some opportunities in IndyCar, and actually I still hadn't signed with Haas. I was gonna do a test for them in July, and the accident was in May, and obviously I couldn't do the test. But I had IndyCar races to do, and I actually flew back to the States, to Indianapolis, because Indianapolis have the best rehab doctors for racing.
Yeah.
And I lived in the motorhome inside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with my mom because they have a medical center there. And I stayed there for 2 months in the motorhome and doing rehab and physical therapy every day there in the track with all the doctors and stuff. And 2.5 months after my accident, I went back racing IndyCar.
Wow.
My bone was still broken, but I had this contract in IndyCar and I didn't want to give up the races. So
Just taped it up.
bro, they put
To a piece of
the
wood,
doctor
is it?
there. He his name's Dr. Tremmel. He's like a legendary IndyCar doctor. He took care of Nelson Piquet and like a bunch of drivers. And we made this carbon fiber brace for my leg to protect my left leg.
Wow.
And when I would go do my race, because I was still under pain because the bone wasn't healed, they would give me these pain shots, painkillers. It's called Toradol, just to kind of help my leg and numb it. And I did 4 IndyCar races. Yeah, 2.5 months after my accident.
Wow.
Had my best IndyCar finishes in the top 10. I couldn't even brake
I
properly.
was gonna say, how did you break?
Dude,
Surely that would have really hurt.
no, it was
every time.
hurting. Honestly, it was hurting. I was braking at like 70% of the pressure I should have. Maybe it was a bit too soon, but doing well in IndyCar, it in those races, I then got the chance to do the test with Haas at the end of that year. Because it was supposed to be in July.
Yeah.
I had my accident, and I was always keeping Gunther up to date and stuff. And I said, listen, I'm back in IndyCar now. This is the proof. Like, I've finished in the top 10 and stuff, and, like, I'm doing well. And he's like, great. Let's put you in the car then at the end of the season. So I think if I wouldn't have done those races, I wouldn't have gotten the chance with Haas. And I didn't tell Gunt. Still, by the time I did the test in Abu Dhabi at the end of the year, my leg still wasn't healed. I didn't want to tell him that because the testing in Formula 1 is so valuable. You don't want to risk a guy that's not ready to do it and put him in the car and waste those miles. So I didn't tell him at the time. And when I did my seat fit and stuff with the F1 car, I wasn't wearing the brace or anything. So I was just doing it normal. But then the day of the test, I put the brace under my suit and hoping that nobody would notice. And I got in the car and I drove. And the only time I got out of the car was to go eat lunch at half day.
And no one knew?
And nobody knew because I put it under the suit. So if you look at the photos of me from that first test in 2018, if you look at my left leg, there's like this bulky thing. And that's
I like your style, mate.
I'm not going to miss a Formula 1
No.
test because he might think I'm not ready. So I wasn't going to tell them that my leg wasn't healed yet.
That's commitment.
So then I did it, and I still haven't, I never got the subject back with him, but I never actually told him that I was still
maybe he'll
racing
know-
with the
he'll
brakes.
know
Yeah,
now.
one day
That's sick.
I'll send him the video. But yeah, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
You gotta
know?
do what you gotta do.
I respect that a lot.
It worked out as the right thing to do, though.
No, it worked out because if I would have waited till the end of the year,
Yeah.
I would have lost the opportunity in IndyCar, and then the Haas Formula 1 thing would have been then for
Could've
the
been
next. Then
gone,
you
yeah.
never know what would have happened.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, mate. Thank you very much for sharing us that
No, thank
story.
Mm.
I think it's now time we
it's time.
get you on the fastest
All right.
lap.
Sounds good.
So you're gonna have a couple of practice laps,
Okay.
and then you'll set 3 laps, and
3
we'll
laps.
take the best time.
Cool.
And then we'll add you to the board. So
Sounds good.
let's.
Do you think you can beat Brad?
Oh man, you gotta believe it to make
He's
it happen,
quick,
right?
bro. He was quick. Let's hit
Let's do it.
So Pietro's on the sim. He did just make a comment. He said, "Dude, are these pedals meant to be like that?" I said,
They're
"Yep."
flying, man.
That's the
They're
gag.
flying. Look at that.
That's the pit stop gag.
Need some improvisation over here.
That's what you get when you come on pit stop. We know he's friends with Brad Benavides. Are they going to be mates after he spanks him? Let's see.
Trying to get some beef going, bro.
That's it. Yeah, you guys can scrap it out in the car park later. It's quite interesting watching these pros do it, right? Because when we do it, we've got full traction on, yeah. You can just second gear, round the corner, fly out. You ain't going to spin out. But these guys are driving, like, realistically. It's weird.
Oh, this might be quite a good lap.
I got track limits on this one, though.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. You should have seen Brad Benavides. Brad went on the grass. Are you changing gears instinctively, or do you have to think about it?
Instinctively.
That's
You
crazy.
get used to it, you know?
Could we have someone close to the top of the leaderboard here? Have a look at that leaderboard. What do you think, Fabs?
I think it's looking pretty damn good, but we'll see.
Especially considering Matt Gallagher uses a sim every day. Oh my god, you saw that, didn't you? You've just seen the screen and I've just seen the screen.
What did it say?
Is it P1?
Okay, sit down. Okay, Pietro.
How we doing?
You've definitely seen it. How do you think you did?
I don't know. Honestly, I think I did pretty decent. Pretty decent.
I will say, all 3 laps you did were very good.
Okay.
They were all very good. They were all so close. So, where would you be happy with?
Honestly, I don't know. Anywhere in the top 3. Well, first, obviously, but.
Okay, this is a big moment. Pietro Fittipaldi, you did the pit stop fastest lap in a 1:05,
Okay.
which does bring us near the top.
Yeah, it's near the top. That's top 4. That's top 4.
In a 1:05, 4.86.
4.8, bro. There you go. Alright, boy. Dude, your couch and computer. Wow,
I have to admit, every time I set one of these things off, I never think about it.
His laptop. Oh my god. Look at the roof. Look at the wall.
It was worth it.
Wow, it was worth it, bro. It was worth it.
Mate, that is mega. That is absolutely mega. They
Legends,
were
thank you, man.
laps. Every single lap was in the 105s. Every single one of your laps won. All 3 of the laps were quicker than Brad's.
That's crazy.
That
man.
is absolutely insane.
It was I got used to the pedals quick, you know, that's why.
Well, there we have it. Someone new at the top of the pit stop fastest lap. That looks unbelievable.
How long did the original record hold?
Oscar was first for a good 8 months.
Really?
Mate. And
He was the first person.
He was the first guest on, so he only had us to beat.
Wow.
And he just went in straight away, did it, like didn't really give a
Yeah.
shit. A lot of these guys have like quite a few practice laps.
Really?
You only had a few. So.
Yeah, you did have a lot less. I just can't believe all 3 of the laps beat Brad. That is insane.
Bonkers, mate. That's bonkers.
That's crazy.
Do you think someone could easily beat you?
They were definitely good
They
laps.
were good laps.
Yeah, they were good laps. So, I don't know.
I noticed you race with glasses on,
I was
right?
going to say.
Yeah. So I race with glasses. So in the race car, I use glasses as well.
Do you?
I used to
Under
wear
the helmet?
contacts before, but they're too difficult. With endurance racing, because you're getting out of the car and getting back in, if I need to like change my contacts with like dirty hands, I change to glasses.
Oh wow!
So that you wear them underneath the helmet?
Yeah.
Wow, that's mad.
I know.
That's cool though.
Yeah, it's I've always worn it. The only time it gets difficult is if it gets like foggy and stuff in the pit lane. But once you go out, like the wind starts blowing, it's alright.
You can still see far enough ahead.
Yeah.
That's handy then. For today's episode, we asked our listeners to send in a couple of questions. So we'll just finish with some questions from our listeners. Jamie Fellon has said, what's the scariest moment you've ever had in your career?
So, yeah, I would say the scariest moment was from my crash in 2018. Just being inside the car and seeing my legs all twisted and stuff.
That's
and
pretty scary.
Blood and bone. And yeah, that was for sure the scariest moment.
What about...
No, actually, no.
Oh.
There's another. The other scariest moment was when I was out of the race car. And I was still there as a Haas reserve driver. It was in Saudi Arabia. My brother was racing Formula 2. And he had his worst accident of his life. And it happened right in front of me. It was on the start. Tail Porcher stalled. And Enzo hit him full on. And I was there on the pit wall. So I was able to see everything. And I only saw him getting in the ambulance, so I didn't know what state he was in. But his car, like, the pedals were all smashed, like, all the way up to the knees. So I said, dude, this guy, his legs are cooked. Like, similar to what happened to Juan. Like, I was, like, I think his legs are, like, mangled. So that was the scariest moment, because I hadn't seen him yet.
Yeah.
And luckily, he only broke his heel.
Wow.
So that was all right.
Jeez,
But that
lucky
was
boy.
a scary, because it wasn't me, you know, if it's me, but if it's my brother, it was like,
That's
Jesus,
crazy,
I have no control of anything, so.
Matilda Beard has said, what is your first thought after a bad race?
You're just pissed, disappointed. The
Yeah.
Monday and Tuesday after a bad race is always terrible. And then by Wednesday, you're okay, and by Thursday, you're on to the next one.
Yeah, you got to move on pretty quick from it, really, haven't you?
Yeah, you got to move on fast, yeah.
I guess it would also depend on why it was a bad race. Like, if it was your fault, if it wasn't your fault.
Yeah, if it was my fault and it was clear where I can improve, then sometimes it's like a bit painful, but like you know that it can be better. If it was something that was out of your control that took away like a podium or a win, then it's like I think it hurts even more.
Mofa Dea, I can't announce that. I have no idea how it says. They say, what does an average day look like when you're helping the team in the factory? So if you're turning up at the factory, you like you said, you get there at 9 a.m. and you're on the sim
usually
most of
if
the
I'm
day.
ever at the factory, it's or because the simulator we use, it's in Ferrari, so we go to the Ferrari factory. So if I'm ever there, it's to use a simulator, and it's like you're from 9 to 5, 9 to 6 on the sim, stop for lunch, and
Good food?
Dude, there's the food at the Ferrari factory is not good. Honestly, and I was thinking Italy, like it would be great food, but the food there, for whatever reason, in the factory there, it's not very
boil
good.
in the bag pastas or
Bro,
pot
it's
noodles.
just like very plain. It's very plain, and there's really good restaurants around there.
Yeah.
And the food there is not it's not very motivating, but sorry.
Tracy MN has said, what's your favorite country to race in? But you said you love Spa. Would you say that's?
So Spa as a racetrack, and then as a let's say as the town and stuff, I really like Austin, Texas. It's a fun
We're
town.
desperate to go out there.
Yeah, it's
for
really
that.
fun.
Got that coming up in the next month. So.
Yeah, it's a really fun city.
I'd love to go out there, get on the back of one of them bull things.
Yeah,
I
the
just
barbecue there too, man.
That's what I was going to say, bro. I just want the barbecue.
Well, there's a place called Terry Black's Barbecue. I go there every year.
Yeah.
It's in the city center. Amazing.
Fuck the racing. I'm just going for the ribs.
Yeah, beef brisket.
I'm going for the ribs, brisket,
Yeah.
steak, all
That's
that
where
shit.
it's at. Yeah.
I was joking, by the way.
06Fin21 has said, do you ever talk to yourself when you're driving the car?
I think when you're pissed off, yeah.
Do you?
Like you start kind of cussing at yourself. Like you're kind of like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like stuff like that, you know, like in your head. But yeah, I think the worst is sometimes like if you're pissed at something and by accident you have the radio open, because sometimes the radio is a latch on button, so you don't have to hold it. You click it and it latches open. Sometimes you forget and you start saying some shit and the team is hearing you and they're
Gunther's a dick, man.
Final question from Zoe Devilenka has said, favorite F1 driver from your childhood?
My favorite F1 driver from my childhood. Man, I would say Fernando Alonso.
Let's go. That's his favorite as well.
Yeah.
The king,
Overall,
man.
bro. The guy is good,
the king. The guy needs more than 2 championships.
Yeah, he does.
I know he
deserves more, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, he is the king. Oh, Pietro, mate. Thank you so much for coming in
thank
today.
you.
It's been an honour. I can't believe we got your name on the board.
And
I
he's
can't
top.
believe you fucking topped it. It's just like, wow.
This is going to be a big clean-up job.
Yeah, this is going to
Yeah,
be
good luck
you.
with that, guys.
Do you know what happened last time he done this? He kind of ran the Hoover around here and there, and it was still everywhere.
For about a month.
Yeah.
Jesus, bro. Yeah, but anyways, honestly, guys, thanks so much for having me. It was very fun. Next time I'll come on with Enzo.
Yeah,
See if he can
sure.
beat my time. We'll go karting
We'll
too.
do the karting.
So
Definitely.
thank you very much. And congrats on everything you guys are achieving as well. It's really cool to see your channel grow so much. So it's awesome.
Thank you so much, bro. It means a lot.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Cheers,
it.
mate.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Yes, bro.
Man, thank you so much. Class episode. Let's go.